Okay, the first way I try to stay motivated to study is by planning ahead.
So, do you still remember the case? Well, let's refresh your mind.
My peak hours are at the start of my day.
Today we are talking about Wilhelm Röntgen.
Wow, now that that's out of the way, let's get this video started. Today I want to talk about how I stay motivated to study, because we're in the middle of the exam period and it can get tough sometimes. But before we talk about that, let's get some studying done. Alright, it is time for a break. Let's do that. I've got my coffee and let's get some more work done, because we do have quite some work left to do. Let's talk further in a minute.
Okay, it is time to reveal what the case of previous week was. So, do you still remember the case? Well, let's refresh your mind. If you haven't seen the previous week, you should first watch that vlog. I'll link it here. And if you continue watching, you will get to know the answer. The case was about a 28-year-old male who had right-sided chest pain. So, what was the diagnosis? Okay, let's help you a little bit further and then reveal the answer. The patient was not feeling ill, except for the pain in his right side of his chest. For the rest, he had been on a long trip and went on a long flight back home. Afterwards, it started. It has probably something to do with that. And that's indeed where we are going. These were the results of the clinical exam. So he was in mild respiratory distress because he had 24 breaths per minute. His saturation was a little bit low. It was 96%, which is, we would like to see that to be around 89%. His heartbeat was also a little bit elevated, around 89 beats per minute. He had asymmetrical breath sounds and there was a hyperresonance to percussion on the right side as well. You should think about what it could be. Your differential diagnosis is key here. And then you need to decide what tests you will be ordering. So at this point, the most likely diagnosis is a flail chest. And that is because he took a flight. He was also an occasional smoker and his symptoms arrived after he took the flight. Let me know if you got it right or not. So let's immediately dive into the next case.
Well, after all, it might be some kind of a white Christmas. Even though Christmas has already passed, well, for me, the whole exam period feels like Christmas. So, yeah. Okay, the first way I try to stay motivated to study is by planning ahead. And wait. I know what you're thinking. I already do that, or that doesn't work for me. There is something more to it. In most cases, and that's also what I struggle with, is that you have too much to do and not enough time. And there are two main reasons for that. And the first reason is that you don't take enough time for the tasks that you have and you procrastinate too long, and that leads to you not having enough time. So let's fix it. So how would you implement this? Well, here I have my calendar that says Monday and Tuesdays. Obviously I plan in the whole week, but for this example, I'll just do Monday and Tuesday. So let's say I have two things to do. So one lesson to complete and 50 flashcards. For example, it probably would take me 1 hour to complete the lesson and 2 hours to make 50 flashcards. And instead of planning this amount of hours into my calendar, I double the amount of time. So that means I'll be doing 2 hours and 4 hours, equaling 6 hours that I will plan into Monday and Tuesday. This will force me to think that I have so much work to do and will give me some extrinsic motivation to actually start ahead of time, because I know if I won't do the work today, I'll have to do even more work tomorrow. So that means that I'll be doing, let's say, 2 hours on Monday of lesson and another 2 hours of flashcards. Then Tuesday I will do 4 hours of flashcards. This leads to two advantages. The first one I've already talked about. It gives you some extrinsic motivation to start. And the second one is that you will probably don't need the amount of time that you planned in to do the work. So you'll have more time free for things you love doing. Which leads me ultimately into the next topic. I don't quit my hobbies. Even making this YouTube video for you is an implementation of that tip. But again, it means that you'll have to start studying for exams more in advance, because otherwise you wouldn't have the time to do this. But it makes sure that I don't need to worry about my exams all the time, and I have something to look forward to after I have studied for X amount of time. Enough of my hobby right now. Let's get some more studying done, and I'll see you in a bit.
So the next case is about a 35-year-old male came to the hospital for intermittent abdominal pain. This pain has been bothering him for over 2 weeks now, and now he had enough of it. So that's why he comes to you right now. You ask about his pain and he says that it is a sharp pain in his upper right abdominal region. He also says that it becomes worse when he eats fatty foods. You ask about his background, what he does, but there is no medical background that is relevant to this case. But he has a normal job at a desk where he sits all day. And he is also a social drinker. So he drinks alcohol 2 to 3 glasses a week. If you ask about medications, he does not take any. You try to ask deeper about his symptoms, and this is what you come up with. He said already that it becomes worse when he eats fatty foods, but now you get more information that it occurs 30 to 60 minutes after he has eaten. He also occasionally feels nausea, but he never had to vomit. And there is also no fever. And that is why it is time for the clinical exam. Think about what you would do as a clinical exam, and we'll come to that in a second. See you in a bit.
Okay, we are done for the morning. Let's get something to eat and talk some more. Unfortunately, my midday break is almost over, but I still got some advice for you to stay motivated. The third thing is to visualize the end result. Maybe thinking about becoming a doctor is quite far ahead because maybe you're in your first year or your second year, but it could be going on a vacation or having succeeded in 50% of med school, or whatever your goal is. For me right now, it is starting my internships, because after this exam period, I'll be getting into the hospital. And the fourth tip is probably the best yet. It is finding your time zone. Okay, that might not ring a bell, but I mean that everybody has a specific time in their day that they are most productive. That could be 1, 2, or even 3 hours of your day that you are most productive. For me, that is in the morning from 8 till 12 p.m. Those are my peak hours where I can do the most amount of work and have the best results. And that ultimately leads me into tip number 5. My peak hours are at the start of my day. I always start with the hardest tasks first, because if they are completed, I don't need to worry about them, and it is easier to do them in the beginning than leaving them at the last point where you don't have the energy to study anymore and then you need to do the hard work. So start with the hard work first. Okay, my coffee is growing cold, let's go upstairs.
It is time for another history lesson. Today we are talking about Wilhelm Röntgen. And now you probably already know where I'm going with this. In 1895, he found that you could take a photo of your bones using X-rays. And believe it or not, he was actually experimenting with cathode rays. And the first photo was reportedly of his wife. On the picture, you can see a wedding ring and her bones. When the photo was taken, she said that she had seen her death. The name X-rays is because he did not know what the rays were, so he just said X-rays. It is funny to know that this was just an accident, and this completely changed the way how medicine was performed. And the best part is that Wilhelm Röntgen did not patent this discovery, so everybody was free to use it. He said this is something that humanity needs. What a guy, am I right? But think about it. Before the X-rays were discovered, the only way to know if your bones were broken or to find foreign objects in your body was to cut open the patient. And that was pretty dangerous in that time. So now you know how X-rays came to be. Let's continue with the video. Okay, I previously talked about knowing your peak performance hours of the day. And unfortunately for me, today those peak hours are over. So what now? Well, the hardest part of studying is getting to start, and that's why I recommend to use the Pomodoro technique. I often use this technique if I don't have the motivation to study. It works like this. You pick an amount of time, let's say 25 minutes, and after you've studied for 25 minutes, you get a 5-minute break. And you repeat that 4 times, and then you deserve a bigger pause. You can also implement it like this, taking a 50-minute study session and having a 10-minute break. That's most often what I do because 25 minutes is quite short for me. But if you're new to this and you don't have any motivation at all, it is better to do 25 minutes than to do nothing at all. Another way how I stay motivated if I'm not feeling like it is to switch it up a bit. So most of the times I need to do multiple tasks. So that could be doing lectures, studying flashcards, or making flashcards. I try to hustle all these types of work because I might not feel like studying flashcards, but I might be feeling doing a lecture. So with that being said, let's get some studying done with that Pomodoro technique and see you in a minute. Oh yeah, the Pomodoro technique doesn't actually work for me. Well, it does, but it doesn't. I have found out that if I just do the Pomodoro technique and set a timer for 50 or 25 minutes, then I don't stick to that. But then I switched it up and I said, okay, but maybe if I point a camera and record myself doing that, I might be more prone to actually doing the Pomodoro technique. And guess what? It did work. So if it doesn't work for you, you could try that. And you don't need to post that video every time you do it, because otherwise my channels would be all Pomodoro technique and nothing else. Okay, back to the case. We ended up at the clinical exam. What would you do? Well, in my case, I would do a full abdominal examination, and that's what we did. You should also always consider that abdominal pain could be referred pain from the chest, so you should always also look at the chest. For this case, let's say the chest was fine. You do a thorough examination of the abdomen, and you start by asking the patient to remove his upper clothing. You look at the abdomen and nothing really is visible at the moment. And that's why you decide to first take your stethoscope. Also there, nothing unusual. Then it is time to start your palpation. With your palpation, you find that there is also a tenderness in that right upper quadrant, but not really in the rest. Then it is time for your specific tests. And there, the test of Murphy is positive, which now you should already know what this indicates. Now I want you to think about your differential diagnosis. What is the most likely diagnosis and what tests could you do to confirm that diagnosis? Leave a comment what you think is the most likely diagnosis and what tests you would do to confirm that. So back to the video. That was the last study session. Let's walk my dog. And whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to tell you the next tip to stay motivated. So let's do this. Look who's ready to walk. Let's do that and not keep him waiting. So the last tip that I have has something to do with what we're going to do right now. Up. Knee. Up.
Today is a very cold day to walk my dog, but this is the next tip. In your breaks, you should always do something active, because most of the times people tend to just sit on their phone for 5 or 10 minutes and then go back to work. But research shows, and I find that too, if you get your blood pumping through your brain, that helps so much and you get so much energy, and it is very much more easy to study afterwards. You retain more of the information and you can even do it faster. So that's a win-win. Okay, let's finish walking my dog and get back inside then, because it's very cold.